When I was 10 years old, I remember very clearly seeing the trailer for a movie called Wayne's World. I'd never heard of it, no idea what it was whatsoever, but Alice Cooper was in it. I was a huge fan of Alice Cooper at that age. Still am, really. Bit of a legend. So I made my parents take me to the cinema to see this film, and I loved it. I laughed so hard. It was amazing. Being the little nerd I was then, I researched the film to find out it was from a TV show, Saturday Night Live. It started off as a sketch from that. I don't think at that point I'd heard of Saturday Night Live, so pre-internet, somehow I researched it. I don't really know how I done this. Probably went to the library and looked up books or whatever. Anyway, I found out about Saturday Night Live, only to discover that many of my favourite comedy actors like Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray all started on that show. Prior to Wayne's World, I was a huge Ghostbusters fan, like everybody was, and I wasn't quite old enough to sort of care about the people in it, I suppose. But once Wayne's World came out, I researched and watched The Blues Brothers, which is still probably my favourite film. But so much stuff came out of this. I bought video cassettes of the best of Saturday Night Live with there's a Steve Martin one, the commercial one I remember, 15th anniversary, which is quite funny because I think it's 45th at least they're on there, and hours of fun, and carried on like I still do this day. I still watch it when I can. As I got a bit older, Adam Sandler and people like that became stars from it. So many great comedy actors went on to big things, and some didn't. And one of which, even though he is beloved in the comedy community, was Norm Macdonald. In 1998, sort of on the back of the success of Happy Gilmore and films like that, what came out of Saturday Night Live, Tommy Boy is another example. Norm Macdonald was given his own movie, Dirty Work, which is what I'm going to discuss today. I think it's a great comedy. It has dated a fair bit in the 24 years since it came out, but I remember renting this, I would have been, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. Me and my mates watched it with a few beers. That's if we were over 18. If not, we'd have obviously just had soft drinks. And really, really enjoyed it. But the film absolutely bombed. Norm Macdonald only ever starred in one other movie after, a film called Scrooged with Danny DeVito and Dave Chappelle. Also good. But this is one of my personal favourites from the era. I watched it with recently with James Rowe, who's been on the show before, a guy of my own age. He's not anti films like this, but I think it's more my taste than his, and I thought, let's do the podcast. I think you probably know how it works now. This is ACM's Vault of Cult, where I show one of my favourite films, which either is a cult classic or I think should be, to somebody who's never seen it before. Good conversation this. We go off on one about comedy, but I had fun watching it again, and I certainly had fun chatting with James about it. Here is that chat for you now. Hello, James.
Hello, Andy.
Thanks for joining us again.
Oh, a pleasure.
Pleasure. Third time you're part of the Free Timers Club now.
Oh, right. Do I get a prize?
When you hit 10.
A 10, get a medal?
No, you just get to sit in a room with Andrew Stretton.
Oh.
Who I think he's done the most. You're coming up to, I think you're joint second.
Oh, okay.
With Antonia and Adam, who've done, I think, 3 as well.
Excellent.
But you've done the most comedies with 2, I think.
This is true. I mean, the first film I did was kind of for comedy.
Oh, yeah.
But probably not intentionally.
The Mighty Peking Man.
That's the one, yeah.
So, yeah, you've been only on season 2, which has really been different. It's been less horror and sort of sci-fi films so far. Doing another comedy from 1998, Dirty Work. This will be the last comedy I do for a while, actually. I think I'm going to go back to doing... I'm planning on doing Dick Tracy next.
It's a 1990 film.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a good one. I like that film.
Yeah. So, but this is the thing. I assumed you'd have seen that.
Yeah. Sorry, the cinema when it came out.
Oh, good man. Yeah. I didn't. But this is a film that I don't think anyone would have seen at the cinema in this country because it didn't get a cinema release.
That's right.
Over here. Kind of nice time to do it, I suppose, because sort of the comedy world is still mourning Norm Macdonald, really. I mean, it's been less than 6 months since he died, I reckon, isn't it?
It's got to be, less than 6 months.
End of last year, and the director, Bob Saget, died Was it around Christmas time?
Just after, I think, beginning of this year.
Beginning
yeah,
of
it
this
was in January. Yeah.
Yeah. So he directed the film, starring and co-written by Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald wrote with Fred Wolf and Frank Sebastiano. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
He's another SNL writer.
Right. I know Fred Wolf is. He was in the film. Has a little cameo in the film. Actually.
Yeah, I think that there's a group of homeless people. I'm assuming the other writer was one of the other.
Right.
But he, both of them, a lot of work since SNL with David Spade.
Yeah.
So I'm quite surprised David Spade isn't in this film.
It's true, because it does play a little bit like an SNL film.
Yeah.
Because it's got lots of people who are in SNL and who wrote for SNL, so you would have thought.
Yeah.
Because it's the time of David Spade was still, or just had probably finished his tenure with SNL, I think.
Yeah, he'd just moved on to his own films and then sitcoms.
Yeah.
We'll just quickly go over the plot, what there is of it, shall we?
Sure.
It's Norm Macdonald plays Mitch, who is basically Norm Macdonald. Yep. His best friend, I forget the name of the character. Sam, played by Artie Lang, who's basically Artie Lang.
Yep.
And Artie Lang's dad.
Yeah, the great Jack Warden as Pops.
Yeah. He's had a heart attack and he needs a heart transplant.
That's right.
And they need to get some money to pay dodgy doctor Chevy Chase.
The great Chevy Chase in one of my favourite, I must say it straight off the bat, probably one of my favourite supporting roles that Chevy Chase has ever done. I thought he was great in this.
Yeah, it's 24 years old, and I'd say it's definitely the best thing he's done in 25 years, in my opinion. He's a doctor who's in trouble with loan sharks.
That's right.
So basically, he's gonna, if they give him $50,000, he'll get the heart transplant sorted.
Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense, but, but anyway.
But nothing Chevy Chase does in this film makes sense, and that's why it works, isn't it? So they set up a revenge for hire service where you can pay people to get revenge, and that's how they make the money. That's highly illegal as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the charges were. Well, they just commit multiple crimes basically against people.
Yeah.
For cash.
While all this is going on, Mitch falls in love with.
Yes.
He calls her Mildred. That's a brilliant bit, I think, where he can't remember her name. But and she's familiar from sitcoms, but I can't think of it.
I can tell you the one. It is Two Guys, a Girl and a Pizza Place.
Okay. Yeah.
That is which starred who's now very famous, but I'm still forgetting his name.
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds, yes. That's right.
Could you remember her name?
In reality, I can't even remember her name in the film at this point.
No.
Was it Kate or something like Katie? Something like that. Yeah. And her name's... No, can't remember it.
But I imagine she'd have been... I didn't make a note of it for some reason.
She's not done much.
No. But this would have been around the same time as that sitcom. I'm guessing.
I think that the sitcom probably would have been, in its early days. Yeah.
I kind of get her confused with Jenny Elfman from Dharma and Greg. She's got the same sort of hair and same 90s-ness about her.
She looks very 90s. She could have been in Friends.
Yeah.
But
she does the job fine, really. She's just sort of there, really.
I think it's one of the most throwaway roles that you ever... It's one of these things where it's like, well, we've got to have a love interest.
Yeah.
And it's completely irrelevant. Ultimately.
Well, you say that. It brings in the sort of subplot of Christopher McDonald, who is basically the villain of the film.
Yes.
Who wants
he's great as well.
Yeah. He wants to basically build a parking lot on where her grandmother lives.
That's part of what he wants to do.
And so that comes into it. So there's a bit of almost drama there.
That's the plot. That's the plot line for her, I suppose, continuing existence, because she becomes really unhappy with him when she finds out. Well, because Norm and Artie Lang's characters, so Sam and Mitch pretty much get her fired or make her lose her job because they go after her boss in one of their revenge.
To get an advert on TV.
That's right.
She works for a car salesman, and they basically take over his live ad to advertise their own illegal business
by putting fake dead hookers in the trunks of the cars.
1998, people.
1998 comedy.
Yeah. But the guy who plays the car salesman's a well-known comedy actor. He's I know him as Whammy from Anchorman.
Anchorman, indeed. And
Krampus.
More recently, and the Office TV show he's in that as well.
Loads of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's very cameo heavy, and I feel that the plot is pretty irrelevant. You've got the villain, which is we should when we talk about the cast, should we talk about Chris Macdonald first?
Yeah.
Because the first thing I can remember him being in was, I think it was Grease 2 or Grease.
Yeah,
Grease 2?
I remember seeing Grease 2 when I was a kid because I loved Grease, and we got Grease 2 out on video, rental, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Back to School's a banger, though.
Okay, if you say so. No, it was just awful, and it just made me think, why did they do this? But I do always remember his face because he had a very distinct face, and so whenever I see him in anything after that, I was like, oh, that was that guy in Grease 2.
Yeah,
but basically it was the John Travolta character.
Was it? Because the other guy who was Rex Manning in Empire Records.
Yes,
he's kind of the nerdier one. Isn't he?
I suppose so. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it also is Michelle Pfeiffer's first film, I think, as well.
Or first starring role,
which she hates, likes to pretend it never happened.
Yeah, but that's actually become a bit of a cult film now.
Well, I'm not surprised, really.
I don't mind it. Well, I haven't seen it for a very long time.
Do you know what? I only seen it that once when I was a kid and thought it was awful. I think I've seen clips of it when it's come on TV.
Yeah,
but I've never sat through it.
Because it was on TV a lot.
Yeah. But of course, what we really remember him from properly is him being Shooter McGavin.
Yeah,
in Happy Gilmore.
But about 2 years before this.
Yeah,
and more or less the same character.
Pretty much.
He's also the villain in Flubber.
Again, I've seen that once when it came out at the cinema. I thought it was awful and hardly remember anything about it.
But around the same time. But he's quite a well-known serious actor as well. His face pops up a lot even now. Mm-hmm. But he is that it shooter.
He does play sort of like political characters and things like that.
Yeah,
now. Sort of like, again, very supporting roles, not big roles. But his face is so recognisable, and his voice. He's got a great voice as well.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting enough, I shared the trailer for this morning. I don't know if it's going to go out, but to advertise on our Facebook, follow us on Facebook page about this. And the trailer said underneath, Christopher Macdonald film. I reckon they meant to put Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Just saw the surname.
Yes.
But I think he does really well in this. I think he's a great. I said in Ernest Goes to Camp one when talking about John Vernon, like a comedy, likeable but evil man.
Yes. Absolutely. He's very good for this level of comedy and this kind of level of film where it is clearly designed for a young adult audience.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
which for Norm Macdonald, I mean, I think he's one of the few comedians really possibly his audience aged with him.
That's probably right.
Yeah. Because we went on to do his chat shows and that sort of thing, where it was still that sort of humour, but we'd watch that opposed to it didn't get criticised as much as say Adam Sandler doing the same sort of humour as he used to do. And I think also in America he concentrated more on, he done like sports podcasts and that sort of thing. Yeah. So and the fact he's a lot edgier than a lot of them SNL comics, hence he got fired.
Yeah.
Which is another reason. There's many reasons this film didn't do very well. A lot of people might just say because it's not very good. But he was fired from SNL about 3 months or something before this was released.
Right.
So NBC, anything to do with it, wouldn't promote the film. There was no ads on there, nothing. And considering it's very, as you mentioned at the beginning, very SNL heavy.
Completely. Yeah.
There were so many of the same writers who must have still been. Some of them writers were probably still doing it when this film came out.
Yeah.
I should turn my phone off. It's always happening. So when it was made, I think they had no idea that when it was released, Norm Macdonald wouldn't be on SNL.
Yeah, probably.
And it's the sort of thing that when it came out, I imagine the likes of Chevy Chase may have come back and hosted. You may have got a lot
absolutely.
So it didn't get the promotion. They spent 13 million on it, which is a fair amount for back then. That's for a comedy, and it only made 10 million. So it didn't even. But it did do well on video. It found done well in America, really well on video. But I suppose people are used to seeing Norm on telly, and it's that sort of.
Well, he's not. He's not a lead, cinematic lead. He's not.
No,
and he plays his character purposely as a non-acting character. He just does his deadpan, straight-faced most of the time style, which is really, in a way, almost him sort of saying "screw you" to the audience who are who don't like it.
It's almost breaking the fourth wall without being too obvious.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a sort of, which I completely got straight away. I'm not a massive fan of him as you are, but I do appreciate his style.
Yeah.
In this, as a comedian, I didn't in this film as a movie, because I just thought this shouldn't be a film in that respect. There's just no point in it really, because it's just for me just a really silly vehicle for him. And I don't care about that. If you want him to be a film that's about Norm, a TV series or something like Norm, then that's great. But this has the feeling of being like something else. Like a Wayne's World or something like that.
I always got the impression this was if you don't know, SNL doesn't run all year. Yeah. And the actors have their 3 months off or 6 months off, however long it is, and they usually go away and do something. And this is what I can see they'd compiled for something to sell Norm Macdonald in the break. And then it all went wrong career-wise for him.
Yeah.
But he initially, reading in interviews, he just wanted to write and direct it, which I think could have made it work a lot better.
Well, it is based off a
Roald
Dahl story, which he had read and gone, right, I want to make an adaptation of that. So clearly, from that piece of information, you would think, right, he wanted to be very much in control of the story and the narrative.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure he was to a certain degree in the end product, but it's not really his. Like I said, it's him, but it's also not him. It's got all these other bits in it which I like as little skits, and some of them I find quite funny, but they don't make up a movie.
Do you find it like it almost plays like a, and that's why I like it, because I do find a lot of this film really funny, but it plays a lot like an episode of, say, Family Guy, where it's just an excuse for jokes.
Yeah,
and sort of
and characters.
And just to be silly, which is kind of, you got to think, when this first came out, I'd have first seen this when it came, I'd have been 18, 19. I'd have rented it. I did rent it from a video shop in Sudbury, and I think on the back of that it was SNL. I think this is how I first got made fully aware of who Norm Macdonald was.
Right.
But just going back to the Roald Dahl thing, I was going to mention that it's from a short story from it's Tales of the Unexpected, but I think a book they done on, because he did write something. And it's called Vengeance is Mine Inc. Yeah. But I imagine it's very different to
I can't. They did do. I'm sure I probably did see it when I was younger on the show, because they did do. I looked it up and I was like, okay, so it was on the show as well as a short story. But yeah, I haven't seen it.
That'd be interesting to track down. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know that until I was doing research for this last night, cramming it. But that's really interesting, actually.
It is. I mean, that shows that he's. This is okay. Here's one of the things that I find a little, and always had done with his style, was that he comes across very much as his character of Norm Macdonald, the character, not necessarily the real man, comes across as someone that doesn't care.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true at all.
Oh, no.
I think he really cared about his craft and about how he wanted to be represented to the audience. And I think it would have been a lot. I don't know if it's just his personality or who he was as an individual that maybe his, again, I'll say again, but it's something that I think a lot about is politics. He was quite a right-wing kind of guy, and working in an environment where he probably annoyed a lot of people politically within SNL. I'm sure that's how he lost his job at SNL.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, because I don't know if he was particularly right-wing or just used to have shots at everybody.
But that's true that he had shots at everybody, but politically when he voted, because he was one of the very few people that was very honest about his politics, and he'd say, yeah, I vote mostly for the Republican. He votes for the Republican, maybe.
But Adam Sandler would admit that as well,
yeah.
I think, up until Trump anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine Norm might have been the same with that from some of the stuff I've heard him say about Trump.
Yeah.
And he actually got a bit upset because he, more recently, one of the last things, he kind of wound down because it seemed like towards the end everything he'd done got him in trouble.
Yeah.
He made a joke about Boris Johnson, sarcastically,
right.
And then he got a load of Boris Johnson supporters be like, oh, good, you and he's like, no, you don't get that. He had to sort of become his real self, like when, almost like what Al Murray would do. And he's like, no, that was a joke. I was being sarcastic. I do not support this man. And he had to do that. And it was just like... Yeah,
well, this is it. This is the kind of thing where you get a little bit lost and confused. Not necessarily the audience, though, some people, but when you're thinking of him as a performer and the people that he would have worked with, and how I'm sure he rubbed people up the wrong way personally about things like politics.
Yeah.
And that would have played a part in, I'm sure, him having trouble working. And that's a shame, really. Just from the point of view, I mean, I don't have to like him personally, or being, or anybody personally, to think, well, they should be able to work. I mean, he's never said, from everything that I've ever seen of him, he's never said anything that I think he shouldn't have said as a comedian.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. And yeah, so that's a real shame that might have. It seems to me quite a big chance that it played a big part of his career not being perhaps as wide as it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not a leader man. I agree with you on that.
No, he's not.
But I mean, his sitcom got 3 seasons, which is, that's fair. But it's kind of forgotten, and maybe forgotten for reasons of it's been pushed aside because it's him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, film-wise, he was in Billy Madison before this.
Yeah, tiny little role.
Well, he's in it throughout the film.
Yeah, but it's a very small. I mean, it's one of Billy's friends.
Yeah, and he's just like the Sarky one.
Yeah.
And he does that fine. Cameos he does really well.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same. Another comedian I really like, Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
Apart from Wayne's World, he's never had the successful. And just after Wayne's World, they stuck him in a load of films.
Yeah.
And he's never. I don't think he's had a hit.
No.
And they've always been panned, but yet he's a really respected stand-up.
Yeah.
And
well, I say I'm not a massive fan of Norm's stuff, and I've said this to you because he's deadpan one-liner guy, and his stuff is for the most part what is now generally called the word used as edgy comedy, and it's one of those things for me where it's hit and miss. Some of them really are good, and I think they're really funny, and some of them I just go, oh, that's just...
Yeah. I mean, this is why he works so well on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live, which if you don't know, we're English, a lot of people won't even know what the hell we're talking about, was the sort of spoof news bit in the middle of Saturday Night Live, while all the arrested cast are putting costumes on and stuff. Usually one person will sit and just basically tell jokes about the news. Norm Macdonald done that. They say that's the reason he got fired, because he said a few things
about the Clintons, maybe.
Yeah, Clintons, Michael Jackson,
and Michael Jackson,
and O.J. Simpson.
The O.J. Simpson ones as well.
Yeah.
Which at the time, was a big deal because
he'd
just got he'd been found not guilty of murdering his wife.
What would Norm say about that? And that was but I think it was the Clinton thing because people SNL were friends with them. That's what the main thing was. But he was told not to. Didn't he literally say they was told not to refer to Michael Jackson or mention him being homosexual or a paedophile?
That's right.
And he'd done the joke, but just in the dress rehearsal normally. Then when they went on air, he just said homosexual paedophile Michael Jackson, then said the joke. And that he's like he wanted to get fired, wasn't it?
I mean, pushing boundaries as far as he could within what I would say is. I mean, people would say not in good taste, but for me personally, it's clearly a joke.
Yeah.
It's clearly I don't. Yeah.
And he was also, with other comedians, one of the most liked.
Yes.
And this isn't just when he died, it wasn't just, everyone loved him. I follow a lot of these comedians online, I watch interviews, loads of YouTube, whatever. everyone seemed to like him, and I think that actually helped his career, because when he had a chat show, Norm Macdonald has a show on Netflix. He got really big names on it, and I think that was his draw, because he knew them and they liked him. And if he was that bad as a person, even though he'd got through all this trouble in his career, these people would not have gone on his show.
No, I think probably as an actual individual, like a day-to-day person, I'm sure he was probably really, really down to earth and quite nice, and clearly wanted to help people as well that he worked with. And it was a comic's comic, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
So
just before we mention, we'll go back to the film. I really recommend his autobiography, because it's just complete fiction, and I found it hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just random stories about his life, but it isn't. Yeah. It's really bizarre. Some of that's really offensive, but it's him, so I don't care. I think sitcoms he works in because it's that sort of it's
a very different format to a film.
And the big hit this year, the year this came out, and it was edited to be a PG-13. I think it's still a 15 in this country, but in America, PG-13. Yeah. They said you can't have a big hit with this offensive comedy, and you can see watching it that it's cut, and some of the jokes could have gone a lot further, and it could have been a lot more offensive. But the irony of it is, the biggest film that year, comedy-wise at least, if not the biggest film of the year, was the R-rated There's Something About Mary.
Right.
And in that, I think you've got to say
it's more gross out humour
than
Norm's style, which is more offensive than in sort of things that you say and making comments about people.
It's not body fluid jokes.
Yeah, it's not body fluid.
But it's also a lot. The acting in that film's a lot better. It's a better constructed film,
definitely,
and just a better made film.
Yes,
and I
don't even like it, and
I mean, I liked it at the time, but that's one. If it hadn't have been a hit, it isn't something I'd want to discuss on this.
Yeah,
it's not something that I personally really connected with. I did prefer Dumb and Dumber at the time, but I'd probably struggle with that now.
Again, that was a better film. Same filmmakers, though, wasn't it? Something About Mary. Yeah.
But you've got things. Well, for this, it's Bob Saget's debut film.
It is.
I think he's only done 1 or 2 films since. But he's done a lot of TV work.
A lot of TV work. He is more television oriented. But again, a lot of people in this country don't know Bob Saget either. And he again was a comedian's comedian.
Yeah.
And was known mostly for doing family TV.
Is it Full House?
Something like that. I've never seen it, never saw the show, but that's what he was mostly known for, at least in America, where he was obviously well known, and that was a huge show. But he, in my opinion, is he was the best teller of the Aristocats joke. Right? And that's a really filthy joke.
The DVD. I'll post a picture of that. It's a. Do you want to just explain to people about this joke?
Okay, so the joke the setup is that a family come and say to a talent agent, we have an act. And he's asked, okay, so what is your act? And then the comedian proceeds to tell, however long, however short they like, the most disgusting, grossest, disturbing things they can think a family would do as an act. And tell it to the agent, and then the agent asks, my God, what do you call that, an act like that? And they say, the Aristocrats!
Yeah.
That's the joke. That's the joke. So the comedian's job is to think of the most messed up thing they can to basically disturb and also, make fun, and whatever, make you laugh if you're into that sort of thing, really messed up stuff. And then have a punchline that really just maybe throws the whole thing away, maybe, or maybe not, depending on how you see humour. But it's a really old joke. It goes back. Comedians have been saying it for probably, I don't know, well over 100 years now.
Yeah, and there's as I just mentioned, I've got the DVD, the documentary. I haven't watched it for years. He's one on that, I'm guessing.
He is on there. Yeah, I think there are bits of it, because his way of telling it was for it to be really long.
Yeah.
Just to go on and on and on, and when you think it's over, he'll be like, oh, but wait, there's more. Yeah. And then go into another whole spiel about something really
which is up. You can kind of see why he worked with Norm Macdonald. I mean, have you ever seen Norm Macdonald as a guest on any chat show? Which I think is where he actually, his best work is being interviewed and just getting a reaction out of the interviewer.
Yes.
He'd tell a joke for 8 minutes with just the crappiest punchline to make himself laugh, which of course would make us laugh.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of him.
Yeah.
I just quickly mention, have you seen many of the stuff he's done on? When he's been on Conan and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Have you seen when Courtney Thorne-Smith is on there, who is the actress? She was in Summer School. I don't think and so. She had a film come out with Carrot Top. And she's on to promote this, and he is just ripping Carrot Top.
Yeah.
And she's trying not to laugh. And they don't give the title of the film. They haven't. It's coming out soon. They're filming it. And she says, well, it has got a title. It's called Chairman of the Board. And Conan says, "Hey, you've gone quiet. Do something with that." And she goes, "Is board spelt B-O-R-E-D?"
Yeah.
Which everyone just cracks up at. And it's just it's one of those moments of it proves that he could just be quick.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it's just you watch. And when he died, Courtney Thorne-Smith gave like this best tribute of just like. That was her first time on a chat show, and the fact he was there she didn't have to do anything. He was just there being funny, and she didn't find it offensive, and apparently Carrot Top himself found it funny, and it was all, but that's been to watch that. You'd think he was just annoying everybody, but he actually wasn't.
That's it. I think that's the kind of thing where it's so chalk and cheese. Like, some people absolutely love it, and then some people just can't stand it.
Yeah.
And I personally do like it for the most part, but I'm not a massive fan of it, and I think it goes on a bit too long sometimes. Yeah. The whole sort of but this is it. Okay, going back to the film.
Yeah.
Right. There's a character in it, very short, very brief character, but it is one of my favourite parts of the film because I do love Don Rickles. He's one of my favourite comedians of all time. And he's one of the inventors, or at least generally would be considered the king of roast humour and insult comedy. And it's comedy that I personally, don't generally these days at my age really find that funny. Like I don't, it's not.
It's
really
definitely something you're funny if you find funny as a teenager.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I will still sometimes put his stuff on and just because his one-liners are just that's again his thing and. Brilliant, just fantastic the way that he can just insult someone just off the cuff and just makes you laugh. You think, oh God, really? Am I laughing at that? That's awful.
Did you see the outtakes at the end? Yeah,
it's brilliant. He does say something. The last thing that he said, like, I don't know how you got this made film made. And I said to him, I completely believe.
They gave you a movie.
I completely understand that sentiment because you do think. Really?
I will have mentioned in the intro to this that there will be spoilers, but there's another brilliant bit. He's basically in one scene.
Yeah,
they work at the cinema.
He's a cinema manager. Yeah,
really childish joke of the film they put on the cinema as well. In that actually,
yes,
Yeah. There's a bit later on in the film where he just rings them up to have a go. For like no reason.
He smashes the phone, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Smashes the phone.
Yeah, it's just like this little throwback joke, which is really good. Mm-hmm. But should we touch on the humour you wouldn't do now?
Yeah.
We say to us, I mean, we're like 40. Yeah. It doesn't seem that old, but it's nearly a quarter of a century old.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the cinema the prank they play is they show in front of an audience a film called Men in Black who have sex with each other.
Yes.
Which I do remember finding funny when I was younger. And it's just they put it on, they look away, and it freaks everyone out.
This is the bit that I don't like about it. It's not the joke that I find rubbish, because I think the joke is fine. I think the joke of putting on a gay porno in front of some well-to-do people in the theatre in the cinema is fine. That's a fine joke. But their whole thing of we mustn't look at it.
Yeah, that's
the bit where I go, really, guys? Yeah, you can't look at.
But it's the same as they basically point them and go, ha ha, you're gay.
Yeah,
which they do in Bill and Ted when they hug.
Yeah, they're fun.
So
which I do still find. I don't know why, but I think
it's their reaction to it.
Yeah.
It's that they push each other away, then just grin at each other and go. So it is that, and it's very juvenile, and it's very. But you're right. The actual joke could work, but it is almost ruined by
this sort of this homophobic attitude towards it, which I just think you're making fun of the well-to-do people who are going to see Men in Black, and now they're going to see Men in Black, the gay film.
But then later, porno. Even though Norm Macdonald sort of has a little pop at Artie Lang character for possibly being gay, then later on in the film it pretty much says his character is the whole Sean Connery thing.
Yes.
So it's just let's get as many jokes in as we can. Yeah. And sometimes they almost needed to pull them back, because there are a lot of jokes in this film. Yeah. Some of them really fail. I mean, I'd agree with that. But it is. I've said this about most comedies I like are the sort of comedy where it's joke.
Sure.
And if there's more hits than misses, I'm kind of all for it.
Yeah. I mean. Airplane, which is a lot older, which again is a film which is joke, is something I appreciate a hell of a lot more. Yeah. Right.
And again, it was one of the first to do that as well.
But it does again have jokes that don't hit all the time, because you can't always have hits when you're having so many jokes. It's just impossible.
There's and I mean that's a film much like Jaws for some reason, don't know where the certificate goes up and down a lot.
Really?
And I've known that to be a PG, a 15. I think it's now a 12. But there's racial humour in there you wouldn't do anymore.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure there's like paedophilia jokes in there about a little boy and.
The captain of he says these, but again, it's not really making it's just. It's more subtle, right? Which I like.
But you wouldn't have it in a PG. You know?
No. If we're talking about certification of films,
and I don't know if I mean, and that was made when Airplane came out. It wasn't really an adult comedy. It was more of a anyone can watch it type.
Yeah.
I see Naked Gun as the more adult of that. Moved on and a bit further.
Certainly.
But yeah, I mean, that's almost a spoof, and so many.
Sure.
That's firing all cylinders. God knows how many, more so than this.
Oh, completely. I mean that.
But I compared this to Family Guy, which Family Guy when it started was kind of produced by the Zucker brothers, wasn't it? So I can see why you'd make that connection.
Yeah. Well, if we are talking about, it's hard not to mention Zucker brothers if we're talking about a comedy that is clearly joke driven than plot driven.
Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah.
What's your favourite of their films? I think Ghost for me. No, sorry. So I had to say that because they did do it.
Very good. One of them did, yes.
Yeah, one of them. But I mean, that I think that their humour was great, but it got ripped off so much, and I think they just ran out of how to do it.
Oh, sure. I mean, it was certainly...
Hence, they stopped, though.
They did, which is good.
But they made some classics. And Top Secret's are really underrated.
Yeah, Top Secret. I do like. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah. Val Kilmer's best film.
It might be true. It might be true.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this would have definitely taken influence from that. You know, everyone involved in this film, there's a lot of comedy actors, writers would have seen that. And it shows. But to get a well-known comedian to direct it and not have anything to do with the writing, that's kind of a strange choice. It seems to me like Norm Macdonald would have got this film made, and he wanted his mate to do it. Yeah. And that's I mean, he doesn't, directing wise, it doesn't seem any worse than the average Adam Sandler film of the time.
Not at all. It looks completely 100%. You're absolutely right, and that's what they were trying to go for. So it's a bit odd that you'd get Bob Saget to do it on the basis of that, other than just you want your friend to have a directing credit.
But that's the sort of thing he'd probably have done.
But writing wise as well, I mean, everything about it is so 90s, like completely carbon copy. Like the line of the plot where he has a girlfriend at the beginning and then she throws him out.
Yeah.
Though we've seen that even in the 80s with like Stripes and stuff, and that happens right at the beginning of that as well. So, but the idea of this everyman who's a bit of a schlub, but is quite likeable and clearly got talent, but he's not using it You know,
I do quite like the bit at the beginning where he's working as a pizza delivery boy.
Yeah.
And he's late, so they had to get the pizza for free.
That's right.
And then he's just lying to the boss about what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite, because that's obviously his humour and the stuff he'd say. So a lot of the jokes, I think, really work if you're a fan of him.
Sure.
That's the... But what I'm trying to say is he wouldn't win any new fans with this.
No. Couldn't imagine that he did.
No. Well, I actually showed it to someone yesterday who, as far as I know, hadn't seen anything he'd done. I mean, she didn't seem to know who he was. But the first 10 minutes, no laughing or anything. I'm like, oh God. And then she was laughing a lot towards the end, because it's almost like getting in that headspace of his humour.
Sure. Yeah.
And I also showed this to my mum years ago, and she didn't like it. I remember there was one bit, I can't think what the scene was, and she just turned to me and said, "This is my mum. You watch some rubbish." I think that might have been possibly the Gary Coleman cameo, which I really like.
I do like the Gary Coleman cameo. The two Gary Coleman cameos.
But it is one of those films where it relies on cheap jokes and cameos.
Yes.
Which is
that is the movie.
But that's also why I like it. But there's should we talk about the cameos? Because Adam Sandler pops up in a dream sequence of Satan roasting the pig and pull on the face. That wasn't meant for him. I can't remember who it was meant for, but he pulled out whoever it was meant to be.
Right.
And Sandler done it, who's good mates with Norm.
Yep.
But really underused. There's a Sandler podcast where they rate how bad they are, and this is, I think, right near the top of the good ones. In fact, he's only in 20 seconds. But in '98, I mean, I love Sandler, and I like that era of his film when he done The Wedding Singer and all that. No, for me,
it's the year, isn't it, Wedding Singer, isn't it?
We've mentioned Jack Warden.
Jack Warden, okay. Again, for those who don't know, Jack Warden was a fantastic actor. Who did end up in his later years in some awful comedies.
And this.
And when I say awful comedies, I don't mean necessarily bad, terrible films, but not straight acting, which is where he came from. He came from playing mainly sort of heavies and everyday Joe type New York kind of characters. But he was great, and he was very reliable as an actor, and goes right back to the 40s. But in his later years, you would see him in films like Problem Child and
I've never seen Problem Child.
And things like films of this kind of thing where he is playing the tough guy, but he's an old tough guy, and he's crude and all the rest.
He's
of that.
very crude in this.
Yeah,
but he's also very funny in this.
Yeah, he is funny because he's a good actor, and he knows how to come across as relatable but also awful.
It goes to show as well that a good actor can do comedy. Look where Leslie Nielsen came from. Going back to
absolutely.
But then a good comedian, which I definitely think Norm Macdonald is, can't necessarily do acting.
No, and which he knew. Again, it's like what I said at the beginning of this. He knows that he wasn't an actor, and he played up on that he wasn't an actor. So. That's why I think it's a bit of it's kind of almost like a piss take. I think in a way he being in a leading role, getting a chance to be the leading character in a film, I think he would have seen as a great opportunity just to say, fuck you, sort of thing.
It's not that far away from bloody Bernard Bresslaw and Sid James in a Carry On film. Yeah. Just being themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas those guys, if you look back, could act, and the other films they should. But Norm Macdonald, he had not big roles, but he had straight role in, I think, People versus Larry Flint, and he's definitely a man on the moon. He's was he in that? He's very quickly. He's Michael Richards. When he's on Fridays.
No, of course, I remember absolutely, and he played that well. I think because Michael Richards was a very serious guy with his craft, and I remember him being all like, "What's he doing? Why is he messing with us?" Sort of thing, which is exactly how he would have been.
Yeah, he's sort of get angry, isn't he, Michael Richards? We've Googled that.
No.
I'm not going to mention that.
No. But again, one of those actors that he said a really stupid thing, and fuck him for that. Yeah. But as far as his craft went, when he was younger, anyway, he was a very serious, very serious
talented guy. I mean, he'd done a film with Jeff Daniels. What was it called? Trial and Error, which I quite liked at the time, where Jeff Daniels is a lawyer.
Yes,
And
yeah.
he has to pretend to be him, and that was all right. But that was another one of these. He was on a massive sitcom during the break. Give him a film, it did very well.
Yeah.
But it's always a good if you can do a comedy and you need a straight guy in it. Put Jeff Daniels in it.
Definitely,
Very reliable actor.
He is very reliable actor. Yeah, versatile that one.
But yeah, but it's Norm. We mentioned McDonald's. What happened there? Edit it. Don't bother. Right. John Goodman's got the most pointless cameo ever.
I was like, what are we doing here?
Something's been edited.
Seriously, why? Why is he in this film? What's the point? It's like, again, like, okay, I'm pretty sure if it wasn't something being edited out, it is the sort of thing where it's like, oh, can I just have my friend in this role, please? For no reason.
I always thought that. They'd have known each other from SNL because John Goodman hosted it a lot. But I think now reading that a lot was cut. There's something cut. There was a big joke with him. Or something.
Because there's nothing, is there? There's no humour, as far as I can remember.
He just comes on and just says he's the mayor. If he had played himself as the mayor or something, there's a little gag there, but there's nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Could have been anybody. Yeah. Anybody could have done it.
Yeah.
But it was John Goodman. Very famous.
We've touched on Chris Farley. I think Farley's great in this.
Well, he's Farley. He is Chris Farley, and it's a little sad to see because of what you knows. I mean, where the film came out, he was already dead. But it's just sad to see it a little bit. You go, God, he does look really unwell. I mean, he did often, obviously, because that was the crazy, outraged.
He's got his nose bitten off in this, so he's not going to look well.
But sure, but he's
so big in it as well.
You could just see all the things like the last time you see him on SNL. You can see, he's finding it hard to breathe and these kind of things. And it's just like, oh, there you go. Because I am a big Chris Farley fan, and I had never seen this film. And I didn't even acknowledge that it was his last one until I saw it.
Well,
and I was like, oh God, that's another reminder.
Well, I think, he is good in it. He is Chris Farley. It's obviously a role written for him. We don't even have to look that up.
Just if you know Chris Farley, that's doing what he does, which is just shouting and being outrageous. Just being outrageous.
And I love the up and downness of him. He's like really angry and then sorry. But apparently the character he's most liked. Remember on SNL they done the Chris Farley show where he'd just get a guest on, say it's Arnie, and he'd be like, "Remember Terminator? That was good." That came from him being nervous backstage with the host or the celebrities, and he'd just sort of say to them, "Oh, Tom Hanks, I really like Big. Do you remember that? Do you remember being in Big?" That's brilliant. And they turned it into a sketch. But this is something I find interesting with it being his last role, and he'd obviously died. Do you think they didn't push he was in it because they didn't want that to take him away?
He's not credited.
He's not credited. No, and I think that might be either they weren't very proud of the film and didn't want it to be remembered for his last film, or
it's possible.
They didn't want it being his last film to overshadow the film in general, because he's not in much of it. He's in a few scenes.
Sure.
So there's probably a bit of both.
I think a bit of both.
But then the last film he did do, what he starred in, Almost Heroes, was pretty dreadful. With Matthew Perry, a comedy western.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking his last film was a bad comedy western, and John Candy's last film was Wagons East.
Wagons East, with, oh God, who was the...
It was Richard Lewis.
It's Richard Lewis. I mean, he's not an actor. He's not. If he's not playing Richard Lewis, there's no point.
I think he's brilliant in Men in Tights, though.
He is in that, isn't he?
He's Prince John, isn't he?
Yeah.
From now on, every toilet in the land will be known as a John.
Okay. All right, but it's a Mel Brooks joke, so it's funny.
Check who writes it, not Adam Sandler. Good joke. Yes. This is co-credit to Sandler for that one joke. When I first saw this, it was it's his last film. I knew that going in. But that era I was a massive fan. But Farley, I know he hated Beverly Hills Ninja, but that was a massive hit. This is I find that film quite likeable, but it is just that's Laugh at the Fat Man, isn't it? Which he wanted to get away from, but then he knew he could get laugh. Tommy Boy I thought was great.
It was.
So I haven't seen that for a long time. But I didn't mind Black Sheep, which everyone hates, but I thought that was alright. There's a scene in Black Sheep where he falls down a mountain and it goes on for ages, or a hill.
That's right.
He gets up. When you look at this film now, I know it's 24 years old, but a lot of them have died
This was something I was thinking of touching on when we were going to do this, because it's quite strange to think how many people. I mean, granted, some of them were died very old.
Yeah.
By the time Jack Warden and Don Rickles.
Yeah.
But I mean, Norm.
Yeah, Norm was
Bob,
a big shock for me, to be honest. I mean, he was,
61.
61, yeah.
Bob Saget was in his 60s as well.
Yeah. Bob Saget always seemed a lot younger than Norm Macdonald. He probably wasn't. Norm Macdonald, you looking at it now, looking at how his career went, he knew what was happening, and that's why he wound down. But we didn't know that. I just thought he was just getting in trouble for everything he said.
Yeah.
And then obviously Farley.
Yeah.
Gary Coleman.
Coleman, yeah.
He didn't die that long after this, I don't think.
No, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
I think by this point his career had really gone to shit. And,
but he's so good in it. I know he's only a little bit, but it's just him, and he
seemed to have a really good time. I know it's an awful thing, but I did find it funny, because I always do find little people getting knocked about a little funny, and I know I shouldn't. I shouldn't.
The scene with the bearded lady and the dwarf.
Yeah,
that was a bit weird.
I didn't like that bit.
Yeah,
I just thought it wasn't funny.
No, it was to throw a joke in. But she was in the X-Men, the early ones.
Yes, Mystique.
Yeah. That was that sort of joke reminded me of Dumb and Dumber, Something About Mary joke. If I'm honest.
Yeah.
Going back to Farley, one thing I do want to mention, when he does a scene where he's on the jukebox and he shouts at the actor he's talking to. Well, the actor's generally scared. He didn't know he was going to do it.
Yeah, I don't blame it. And that was kind of a good joke as well, because it's a joke about the name of the film.
Oh, no, the name of the song they're going to play.
Yeah, because it's...
There's a bar fight.
Yeah.
And his Street Fighter man, he puts on Pina Colada song by mistake.
Yeah, that's by mistake. But the song that he was going to put on was a...
I thought it was Street Fighter Man by
was it?
Rolling Stones.
Yeah. No, sorry, no, that's right. Yeah.
And then
sorry.
Another thing I want to touch on, a joke I did find quite funny when they're arguing with the frat boy lads, and they do the switch with the police.
Yes.
And then there's a scene where the police are just beating people
up,
which is like, ooh.
When you think of it now, it's really fascinating, because all the guys that they're beating up on are white jocks, rich, going to college and all that. But yes, if it was sort of,
he played
from a different point of view, from a different perspective. I mean, the joke isn't look at the cops, really. It's that's just this,
I think it's just the humour to get
now. It's like I don't know.
And the little jokes I like, where like Norm actually punches someone and hurts his own fist.
Yes,
it's really stupid, but
that's fine. I do like that too, because it's showing him as being the sort of he's a guy who doesn't fight.
Yeah. What about the prison scene?
Don't like it.
No.
Don't like it at all. And I know it's the kind of joke he would do on SNL, which I wouldn't like, because it's dragging out a homophobic joke, and I just can't. It's
not. It's that real stereotype of prison.
Yeah.
And I think that joke would have gone on even longer in there. And it's one of those, for me, not so much now, but when I was younger, I would laugh at it, but then I'd feel bad for laughing at it. Yeah. It's almost shock humour.
But I personally just don't. I find it annoying, because I find it really just cheap, lazy stuff, and I'm just like, no, and stop. And I was like, he's going to drag it out, isn't he? I was like,
but that's the
get
sort
on
of thing
with it. Just get on with it.
That's the sort of thing that he'd know it was cheap, he'd know it was lazy, and he'd know that'd annoy people.
Yeah.
Hence,
and
I think it's not. It's one of the weaker jokes in the film. Unfortunately, it's one of the more remembered ones.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it's Norm, it actually works better than, say, if a lot of people have done that joke.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. He's the person that, if you are going to do that joke, at least it makes sense that he's doing it. Yeah. But I just would rather he wasn't. He can be funny without telling these kind of jokes. Even though you're not as big a fan or even a fan, he's better than that joke. He is better than that joke. I've laughed at loads of things that he's done on SNL, and it's a shame that for this film there was very little that he did that I found funny, and it was mostly like Chevy Chase, which I thought was great. I think Norm playing off people being really funny is good. Like him and Jack Warden, like his relationship with Pups is makes Jack Warden hilarious.
Just
absolutely brilliant.
This is the thing, because I know he's known for stand-up and his update, but he actually, when it comes to comedy, he's a team player.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to, like I say, on the chat shows, he'd be the hilarious one, but he'd make you, or like with Courtney Thorne-Smith, it wasn't going well. He saved that interview and he tried to make it enjoyable for everybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't look at me, I'm funny.
Yeah.
It was more let's all have fun.
Yeah, sure.
And that's another reason. I mean, he must have known that he couldn't really carry a film. Let's get some of my mates in. Let's get some other funny people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
which I think is different to, say, Adam Sandler, who I think just wants to work with his mates.
Yeah, sure.
You know, you can do the jokes, you know, some funny stuff with his mates. But when you look at a Sandler film, the fact that they're usually named after the character he plays,
Mm-hmm.
it is all about him. You know, Little Nicky, Happy Gilmore, even Jack and Jill, they're both him, huh?
Yeah.
Whereas this isn't called Mitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's called Dirty Work.
Yeah, you work. Yeah. Well, Chevy Chase, we both said we like him in it. I think he's just being Chevy Chase, which I missed.
Doing Chevy Chase's great humour, which is subtle, and yet, sort of almost like, what are you doing, dude? Sort of like, why have you got yourself into this situation? But played at such a low key level, and it's all in his. It's mostly in his eyes, I think, in the way he tells so much with his facial expressions, which again really subtle, but just enough to make you go.
Yeah, and his timing's brilliant.
It's just unbelievable. Like this, like you watch it and you go, look, that's a guy who knows how to do film comedy, like there.
Yeah, and this, I mean, I couldn't find a picture of it. I'm sure when it was released over here, they superimposed him onto the cover.
Really?
I'm sure it's like the cover's like Norm stood against a wall and it says "Dirty Work."
Yeah.
And I seem to remember, I might have dreamt it, but I often dream about Chevy Chase. I seem to remember the wall. And then Chevy Chase is there with his stethoscope on and
Right.
the doctor.
Oh.
And it was a selling point in this country for it because people didn't know who Norm was.
Absolutely.
And even then, it might have been just before people really knew who Adam Sandler was. Because Gilmore and Madison weren't big over here.
It was the wedding scene was the one that made him...
Yeah, worldwide. Yeah. But I think Chevy Chase is great, and he hadn't had a hit film for a while. Because it's a few years after, say, Memoirs of Invisible Man. Isn't it bad that think of Chevy Chase films, I look around my flat, well, there's the DVD, that one. At least it didn't, the noise earlier was DVDs falling over, by the way, people.
Yeah, there's a lot of them in here.
Yes. So, I don't know what Chevy Chase's mindset was at this point, but I know that he'd done this film because he's friends with Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Chevy Chase was the first person ever to do Weekend Update, and I'm sure he's quoted in saying the only other person he liked doing it was Norm.
Mm-hmm.
And people wouldn't have thought... Chevy Chase has got this rep, hasn't he? There's a lot of bad things said about him.
Yeah.
And I don't know... I've always liked him. I can't help it.
I think he's probably a bit mean.
Yeah, but I think he regrets a lot of things, if you see modern interviews.
Yeah.
And I think he got... If you don't know, Saturday Night Live was 1975, new show, it was massive.
Yep.
Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Gilda Radner, loads of them started on it. Chevy Chase, after one season, left because he was offered films and went and done these films.
Yep.
I think he got big-headed.
Yep.
But I also don't think he'd have been as bad as some people say.
Who knows?
But he apparently did have a fight with Bill Murray.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising. Bill Murray fights with pretty much everybody.
But then they've clearly made up. There's pictures online of them together having a coffee or whatever a few weeks ago, and they were all young then. There was a lot of drugs going about.
Yeah.
As well
then.
Is it true that on the Blues Brothers there was a part in the budget for cocaine?
Yeah.
You know,
well, that's I don't know if it's true or not, but that is a thing that people say.
Yeah. Whereas this is a good, this is the end of Chevy Chase's film career.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I mean, after this, I think all I can think of is he's done half acceptable or hit wise with his Hot Dog Time Machine. Where he's the best thing about that film, in my opinion.
I haven't seen it.
He pops up as the weird time machine salesman. Just says it's like he's not even seen the script. And just then a film I watched recently, which is probably only a few years after this, he voices the Karate Dog. You recommended this for me.
Yeah.
A film called The Karate Dog, which is just goes to show how he's gone from being in the vacation films and Fletch and Caddyshack, which were massive hits,
Huge.
to not a lot. But then he was getting big hits for sort of 20 years, really. No, so 15 years.
15 years.
Because late 70s to 3 or 4 years before this.
Yeah.
And he'd done things like Cops and Robinsons in the end with Jack Police. Wasn't it? He'd come off the back of City Slickers and want to do another comedy.
Yeah.
So they stick him in a film with Chevy Chase.
Oh, Jack Palance.
That's it. So yeah.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, that's
What's that called?
Cops and Robinsons.
Cops and Robinsons.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It was very family friendly.
Right.
Yeah. Around the same time, Chevy Chase done another one called Man of the House with the little kid from Home Improvement and what's her name from Charlie's Angels in the 70s with Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah.
He'd done a film with her, which in America was massive, actually. That might
Right.
have been his last big hit. But really cheesy, Disney made.
Yeah.
That's kind of where his career went. He voiced dogs
Well, that is.
and doing Disney films.
It is true that his style of comedy, though, I think, was very much suited for a more maybe family friendly, maybe you could say, but at least not something that's gross or really insulting humour.
Yeah.
I always love the vacation films, even European Vacation, which wasn't great. But
Vegas? Yeah. He was good in it, though.
Yeah.
And you got to think, he had quite a few big hits or ones we've all sort of grown up liking, like Three Amigos wasn't a big hit.
Yeah, I mean, Three Amigos used to watch all the time as a kid. That was always, again, that's a film for kids, ultimately, and it's funny.
Yeah.
It's still funny today.
Yeah. But, to have that, it seems like he sort of faded out. But he's very 80s, isn't he?
His style I think his style was just not really suited, I suppose, and I suppose at his age as well, he'd have to get the younger generation in the leading roles.
But
I think no Steve Martin.
No, because Steve Martin really adapted.
Absolutely.
And Steve Martin worked as well really in serious stuff, and also he had his music and his art and stuff.
And he was probably just a nicer person to work with, because I just think the things with Chevy Chase are that he was a bit difficult.
Well, Chris Columbus went on to do Home Alone because he left Christmas Vacation because he couldn't get on with Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah. Well,
which I don't think anyone's denying that. Actually. I don't think that's a rumour. I think that is fact.
Yeah.
So we know what I like follow Chevy Chase on Instagram and all that, and he seems to now appreciate his fans, but you hear these stories about him being rude, and he got fired from Community, but I'm not sure if that was suited for him anyway. I've never watched it. Everyone bangs on about it.
I haven't seen it either.
Well, I've seen the odd episode.
But no, I've never. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of it. And it is a thing for many years now, because it's still running, isn't it? And it's been around for a while.
I think so. Or they're coming back or something.
At least 10 years it's been going around anyway. People say it's great, but I've just never seen it.
I think I've seen I started to watch it, and it was another where maybe it's because I'm 40, but my humour is very that era SNL, and 90s era, if I'm honest. So I'm watching it. I'm just waiting for Chevy Chase to be in it to make me laugh, And I might even be missing what everyone's, because I'm just like, where's Chevy Chase? Where's he gone?
I completely, like I said, I haven't seen the show, but I do know what that feeling's like when you're watching something modern and you're going, bring on the old people with the funnies, please, because these young people are not making me laugh. And that's weird. That makes me feel so old. I'm not old. Again, I'm 39, nearly 40 years old. I'm not an old man.
It's strange. But I think you're like me. You got into films, comedy, even music when you was probably a lot younger than a lot of people getting into it.
Probably, so loved films and music when I was, pre-teenager, so
talk about music and Chevy Chase. I've always wanted to get hold of. He's released a rock and roll album in the 80s, and I just can't get hold of it. But it's much like
vinyl of that.
I don't think he's anywhere or done anything as bad as Michael Richards, who we mentioned earlier. But like him, he's very talented, and you can't take that away.
Oh he's done nothing like what Michael Richards has done. I don't think it's even on the same.
No, but you can still say. You can see watching these things that they're talented people.
Yeah.
And
egos are a part of the whole thing. I mean, people got massive egos when you're a performer.
Yeah.
and you will rub up against people the wrong way. Like that. You know, it's going to happen.
People getting angry that the guy they found rude when his catchphrase at the time in the 70s was "I'm Chevy Chase and you're not."
Oh, yeah. That's it, right?
Yeah,
that's completely it.
Yeah. And also with Norm, and he does it a few times in this film. He can say like the most average or even bad joke, and he does a little laugh at the end of it, and it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
So
I understand that.
yeah. So just to summarise, we've been talking an hour now, mate.
No, really? Well,
We've-
look, this is all right. Okay, I mean, we've been not necessarily talking about the film because there's not necessarily too much to say about the movie. If you've seen a 90s comedy, you've seen this already. But what this film has is a lot of good comedic actors in it, and non-comedic actors who can play comedy well, and some of them aren't with us anymore. And there's a lot to talk about there with just the personalities.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some. I'm going to try to wind it up. That beep, what went was that you're nearly done. It wasn't my phone going off again. So, was there any cameos we've missed or anything? I'm just trying to think.
I don't think so.
We didn't really touch on Artie Lang much, but he's
it's true.
He's more of a nowadays. He does podcasts, and he was Harry. What's his name? Stern. Howard Stern's sort of psychic.
Is he still on the Howard Stern show? Because I remember him being again like 10, 12 years ago. He was on it. I don't know about nowadays.
But he's had a troubled life as well.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of problem with drug addiction and
depression.
being suicidal and attempted suicide I think at least once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was brought into the Norm show. Norm had a sitcom called The Norm Show, second season. And I think that was Norm Macdonald getting his mate give him work and he was better in Dirty Work than he was in the sitcom, I found, but the same sort of character. I mean, he's just sort of he's almost the fool guy in this, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Completely.
I watched it with yesterday. Really cracked up at the really childish joke. Well, there's the movie line, and they do the Mooney.
Yes.
And he's doing a Mooney, and Norm just stops the car, gets out, and walks off.
Yeah.
And that's another joke. I think that because it's them, and it's just a deadpan of Norm just getting out, and then also the fact that it's not being referred to after. There's no argument about him doing.
Oh
this.
no!
It's just
he wasn't supposed to stop the car. So he just walks off.
So it's some. There is great humour in this, but as a film, I can see why people don't like it.
It's not really a film. It's just bits.
Of
funny bits and not so funny bits.
Yeah, but one of the top 5 films in this country at the moment, or the world possibly, is the new Jackass film. Yeah, that's a film. That's advertised as a film.
A film, again, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I've seen Jackass. I remember it very well, and it's something I'm not interested in.
Yeah,
but I can see why people find it funny.
I went to see it.
I know you did. And I mean, I don't know if this new film is a sort of for nostalgia. As Jackass is obviously like 20 plus years now coming up to that.
I'll give you a short review.
Yeah.
It's all been done before.
Yeah.
But there's more. This one they try to up it. They're all a bit too old now. They've got new young people in today. If they can carry it on, nostalgia trip. That's a difficult to stretch it to 90 minutes, and I think it should have been an hour special or something.
Yeah.
And also with
that makes sense.
Some of this humour, I see people since Jackass, like even Sacha Baron Cohen, the stuff he's doing now. In a way, it's the same because it's the pranking, and it's just been done better since. But I respect what they done in a way. It's not so much my sort of thing. I always preferred what Tom Green was doing at the time.
And earlier as well.
Yeah. So when it comes to comedy, I think comedy's the one genre, I suppose, with horror in a way, but more so comedy, where plot isn't necessarily the most important thing.
Not at all. Yeah, it's really not for the most part. But
performances are.
Yeah.
Even if like Norm Macdonald's performance in this could be seen as it's bad, but it's Norm Macdonald, and he has that. That's him. So I think he gets away with it because it's his vehicle.
He gets away with it with his fans, obviously, because that they want him to be that.
Yeah.
But I think if you were trying to sell it to new people, it just is never going to work.
Yeah. And sometimes he'd pop up in an Adam Sandler film, like with a fake moustache on or whatever, and you just don't even. He done it himself when he was on SNL as Burt Reynolds.
It's brilliant. That's I think that's his funniest thing he's ever done.
Silly hat.
Yeah, it's a silly hat. You know.
But yeah, I didn't realise that he came up with that sketch. But he came up with that sketch. He ripped it off from someone else, from Fridays, which we mentioned earlier. Do you know this? There's Eugene Lovey wrote a sketch, and basically he wanted to redo it when Martin Short came on to SNL, and he rang up Eugene Lovey and was like, "Can I do a new take on it?" And Eugene Lovey's like, "Go for it." But that to me also says a lot of people have just done it. Spoofing a game show has been done a lot. But he saw this was so similar to something else that he actually got permission.
Yeah, that's good. Good for him. That's respectful.
Yeah. So we should really sum up. I'm going to ask you for a rating out of 5.
2 as a film. If you're just wanting it for the comedy, I go 3, even maybe even a 4. For some of the bits, like the Chevy. If it was just going to be the Chevy Chase bit and the Don Rickles bit, it's great. It's great. Okay. But yeah, overall as a film, because I have to look at it from that point of view. Because that's what I do.
This is the thing. You say you're giving it 2, which we'll stick by. I still see that you enjoyed it, or some of it.
I've enjoyed enough of it. Though I will tell you that I did, for the 80 minutes, because it's not very long, I did find it a bit of a struggle getting through it all in one sitting. I was like, I don't really want to turn this off now. Because
you did say when I saw it before you might watch it twice. I'm guessing you didn't.
I didn't.
No. I've watched it twice this year.
Right.
But to show other people, man, and to...
I will watch some of those scenes again, as I'll just call them sketches, really, again. But I'm watching the whole film again now. I'm not going to watch the whole film again.
There's some weird, like, the raccoon bits were weird. They let some... there's some really bad CGI raccoons.
Skunks.
Oh, skunks. That's it.
Into the because it's the opera again. We haven't talked about this part of the plot because it's just nonsense. That he wants to build an opera house, and I'm guessing the joke about that is that it's gay to want to have an opera house. I thought
it was more of a posh person thing.
I don't know. I
didn't see possibly.
I mean, they talk about but they talking about him like having sex with his dog,
or fingering the dog the way he holds it. Yeah. It's comedy, mate.
I just like, really, is this?
It's just let's just throw another joke in.
Has he got?
But they're the sort of jokes
the dog's ass
you sort of forget about those jokes in a way. But one bit I did like, and I think it might have been quite a famous actor playing, or sort of character actor. Well, he puts this opera on, it all goes wrong. You've got
that was one of the funniest parts.
Pops on stage after the opera singer was weird but funny. But the critic in the crowd.
That was one of the funniest parts of the film, but weren't like some famous comedy actors. Was a guy just going, "Brilliant, fantastic, love it, what an innovation!"
Because I remember when I first saw it, I thought it isn't, but I thought, is that Christopher Lee? The actor, isn't, but the actor, he's got that sort of, I'm sure I've seen him in other stuff. But yeah, it's jokes like that. It's just like, and I also like, you might not be a fan of this, I don't know if you listened to him, but I've done Ernest Goes to Camp for the last one. I know you've seen that film.
Yeah.
There's a joke through that film where at the beginning, there's like a golf cart or whatever it is, and he gets off and it carries on going. And throughout the film, it's just in the background, it keeps popping up, and they use it at the end. And I love a running joke, you know. And in this, the running joke is him just getting thrown.
Again, this was another thing I wanted to touch on if we're just looking at the film. I do like the idea of an actor pretending to be Norm. Being thrown through a window or out of a door, and really being thrown, and it's not a doll. He's a stuntman, who doesn't really look a thing like him.
That's part of the
joke. And that's funny. That's old timey humour. I find that very funny.
And Ai Lang or whoever's with him never getting thrown. It's always him.
Yeah, it's always Norm.
And then there's the Kilpatrick punching in the stomach. God, that's weird.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly into that, and I don't. Again, this is because the thing that makes me endear Norm,
but the other way around.
Yeah, the bit something that does endear me to Norm a little bit is that he gets thrown, and that's him, putting himself as the fall guy.
Yeah.
Where in that joke he's basically getting out of it and basically making Ai Lang the guy, and Ai Lang's none the wiser.
It's weird because it goes back and forth because it's like there's that, and then the prison scene we mentioned earlier where he's the victim and Artie Lang isn't.
Yeah.
It's just a back and it's just like that. What can we do for a joke?
But he's not really the victim in that because he just comes out of it being right. I want to now just tell you off for doing what you did to me, and I just don't find that really like as being the victim. It's more to do with let's laugh at how prison rape is, and I don't.
Yeah, but it kind of later on they reference it. He's the victim, so it's just all they want to do is that joke of the shame on you.
Yeah, the shame on you.
Yeah. Which is very Norm, but I think that's the sort of joke. It works better, that humour, say on Weekend Update or if he's doing stand up, than to actually see it acted out.
I agree,
because it brings that realness to it.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff in his book is very what modern people would call dark, right?
Yeah.
And it works in the book. And there was talk of them making a film out of this before he died. They still could.
Yeah.
And I'm like, some of that it will get banned.
Right.
And then banned. Right. So they'd just not do certain bits.
Yeah.
But it's because it's him. That's another thing. It's, and one joke with another, because it's him, when they're talking about when they spoiler alert, turns out they are brothers. Mm-hmm. And there's some weird humour with the pictures of the parents together.
That's right.
Which does make me chuckle. I can't help it. But then there's the remember when we were kids and I looked at and then it goes that level, and I'm thinking, in this country, there's no way this film would have been a 12. If in America it's PG-13, it's not that offensive that it's an R rate. But to me, this isn't. It is cut down.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of joke shouldn't be in a family-friendly film.
Sure, I mean, an incest joke or a non, you don't know that it's incest, and so the joke is, we didn't know, and I like, I hear that and I go, that's a cheap joke.
Yeah.
Right. You guys know your brothers. Oh, there's another sibling. Oh, someone did something with that sibling.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha. I don't really find it like necessarily that funny. I find it, and I don't even find it that disturbing either. I don't go, oh, that's disgusting. I just go, oh, fucking hell, come on, guys.
With that, when I watched it yesterday, I did laugh at that bit. But it's the delivery, the bad acting reaction, though.
Yeah.
And but if that was in an Owen Wilson comedy, I wouldn't have laughed at it.
And that is the sort of thing that they would do, like Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson would do. That sort of joke.
I don't dislike their films. I think they're.
And it's definitely the sort of thing Adam Sandler would do.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. This is the thing we've mentioned this in 8 Crazy Nights. I still will watch Sandler films. I still think he's got something left in him. But for me, That's My Boy was the one where I'm just like, I can't justify it. I can't stick up for that. He had a few hits. And I mean, I spent a good 20 years going, look, Little Nicky's all right. Fucking leave it. Then he does that, and I'm like, all right, got me. I'm out. But then I've enjoyed the family stuff he's done on Netflix, if I'm honest. But I don't see that as films. I see anything made for Netflix as TV. That's me.
Fair enough.
So anyway, we'll stop.
We've really gone on this one.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you very much for joining me. I haven't mentioned I've known you years.
Yeah.
But you're King Street Cinema.
Yes.
Where you're working.
Yeah.
What I think we should do, because it's about old films, you should mention that you've got. Is it 1982 season?
We do. 1982 Future Classics is what the theme is. So every month we're going to show a film from 1982, which is still seen today as a classic people still watch. So
we've got
for this month we've got Blade Runner.
And then it's a Friday night this month.
Yeah,
I think you're moving it to Tuesdays. This is what I'm excited about, because I can go.
Right, they might not all be on Tuesdays, but
Wrath of Khan is.
Right. Wrath of Khan. So
Poltergeist. There's loads.
Poltergeist. So try to mix it up a little bit with the genres. They're not all going to be sci-fi horror. There's a couple of
Tootsie.
There's Tootsie and King of Comedy.
Oh yes, yeah.
And the Richmond film. I forget what it's called now. Fast Times at Richmond High.
Oh yes, yeah. That's a really good mix of films, and is classics, and from back then, I'd have thought. If someone said to me, "Name 4 good films from '82," I'd have been like,
Tron. We got and Dark Crystal. These ones I'm thinking now. I'm just
cool. A lot of these films would be perfect for this podcast because they're ones that people love now, but Dark Crystal, Tron didn't do very well.
No,
at the time,
but they've become classics.
Yeah,
that's why future. I mean, none of them. I think maybe 1 or 2 maybe were like big hits. I mean, like we haven't got E.T.
Yeah.
Right, because it was massive at the time.
Yeah.
So the idea was, I mean, Blade Runner was not a hit.
No, true.
All these films are sort of, films that come along as time. That's why it's called future.
Yeah, I mean, Poltergeist kind of was, but Wrath Khan is one which definitely done better over time.
Yeah.
And
like I say, not all of them. I think Tootsie as well was pretty big at the time as well.
I watched that because Bill Murray's in it.
Yeah.
There you go. So we'll leave it at that. Okay. Thank you very much, mate, and hopefully I'll get you back for another one and do something that isn't juvenile comedy.
Yeah, that'll be good. Anyway, brilliant.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, that's another podcast done. Once again, thanks to James for taking his time out to do that. Do really appreciate it. Thanks to any of you who listened. Any films you'd like me to watch, possibly, just throw them my way, and I can give it a go, and I'll tell you what I think if I get a chance. Normally I talk about some recent releases which I think could go on to be cult classics or what I like, but we've really overdone it. I'll try to keep these about an hour, and we're well over that, so I'll leave that for now. But leave feedback on the Facebook, Instagram. Tend to not check Twitter, if I'm honest. I should, but I don't know, I just don't get it. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram accounts, or if you know me, give me a shout. If you don't know me, introduce yourselves. You never know. Actually, don't. There's some funny people out there, and let's just keep it formal. Yeah, that would be great. So yeah, there should be another film coming out. I am joking. I'm not actually scared of all of you. Well, some of you. Yeah, okay, most of you. But those I know are all right. So I'm going to stop talking gibberish now, and we're back very soon. Some of the films I'm hoping to do: Dick Tracy, The Last Starfighter, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. All these are being chatted about. Trying to get people to do them. People are interested, so hopefully there'll be another show with you within the next week to 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. But honestly, thanks a lot for listening, and keep watching those films. Sod the critics. We know what's good, don't we? Laters.